What a win for FC Barcelona. To be down 1 goal into 10 men and to come back, 2-0 victory over Osasuna in the VAR. That's one of the best comebacks that Culés have seen in a very long time. And as I just mentioned, the resolve against a really gritty Osasuna team in their own right in Pamplona, well, that makes those 3 points even better. And with that, Barcelona is 5 points atop the table and at least 2 points clear of Real Madrid heading into the international break, depending on the result on Thursday. This is one of those games where I wish I didn't just have 5 headlines because I feel like I need a lot more. And there will be stuff that's going to be left on the cutting room floor that'll have to be saved for a podcast, or things going to be jammed in there where they seem like they don't belong. Either way, let's do it. The 5 headlines from Barcelona's 2-1 victory over Osasuna in the Liga. One is proper title race. For those who watch Rayo Vallecano, I know we can get on Real Madrid for not having good performances, but that win for Rayo Vallecano said a lot more about the other team in Madrid than it did about the team in white. They earned those 3 points and beat Real Madrid comprehensively. In the same way that I would have said that Osasuna went out, took it to Barcelona. Yeah, Barcelona were playing poorly, but Osasuna were playing well and deserved something, at least in the first half. Because this is a tough Osasuna team. It's the same team that was fighting for the Europa League spots for quite a long time last season and will likely do the same thing again this year. It's also the same team that took a 1-1 draw off of Real Madrid earlier in this season. So being at home against Barcelona, nothing was guaranteed. And I know the result at the end does change the narrative a little bit, and I do get to take my victory lap when I do say and continue to say that Barcelona are good enough to win the Liga. They have the depth in the squad, but more importantly, for those who said Xavi out, Xavi's been the best manager in the league because his team is at the top of the table. Barcelona, for some reason, have a mentality shift when they're in Spain. They believe in themselves. They believe that they get these results no matter who the opponent, with the exception of that Real Madrid game. They seem to flip that switch. And unlike in Europe, where they believe themselves to be second best, in Spain, you can see what they think of themselves. Dembélé in the Liga thinks he's the most influential player on the field. And a lot of the time, he's right. In Spain, Pedri stands out for doing everything as opposed to Europe, where it seems like he's putting out fires. Even down to 10 men, Xavi made some tweaks and Barcelona played more freely, matching Osasuna stride for stride, even as the home team played a high line and pressured Barcelona deep into their own third. I talk a lot about deserving, and maybe that fight they showed in the second half was enough to convince me that Barcelona deserved the win. And speaking of deserving, I think we actually start by talking about the second goal more than the first, because it was a player that talked this week about wanting to score more goals. And as far as deserving a goal, Raphinha did more than that for that second goal in the game, and the one that would ultimately, of course, be the winner. While Raphinha gets a lot of credit in a second, it starts with Frenkie de Jong. Xavi's decision to switch him as a center back, not to say with 10 men that he had much of a choice, but for much of that time in the first half and to start the second, Barcelona were playing a 4-4-1. And then as subs came on and things got switched up, even prior to the subs, in the late 60s, around the 67th, 68th minute, Xavi did switch it up. And it was de Jong playing largely as a center back in what was kind of a back three, with Balde and Alba both pushing forward a bit more. So Xavi was going for that game. And Frenkie de Jong's positioning, dropping even deeper, was a large part of that. And Frenkie de Jong is a good player, a really talented player who doesn't get to show the best of what he can do. And I kind of said in the past that I like the idea of him as a center back. I don't know how much you could trust it next to Eric Garcia, who does very much the same things, and defensively, there are question marks. So Frenkie de Jong is a center back, there might be some question marks. But there are no questions about the ball he delivered to Raphinha. Just tremendous 10 of 10 ball from Frenkie de Jong over the top, timed perfectly, especially the run, too, from Raphinha now switching to the Brazilian. Just a perfectly timed run in behind, started from wide, cut it through the middle, and that is the kind of run, and I know that for the first goal, we'll talk about that later, but Ferran Torres' run to bring 2 defenders from Osasuna, it's not worth 55 million euros, in the same way that run from Raphinha alone isn't worth his price tag, and 1 goal isn't worth his price tag. But that is the kind of run, and that is the kind of goal that Barcelona spent money on Raphinha for. That is the kind of single moment that the Brazilian can provide you, and why he was so coveted. What was just as tremendous from Raphinha too was, I think, the decision-making, and this might get lost in the game stories, but the decision he made to, prior to that run, when that whole action began, he's the one who gets fouled. Instead of dribbling directly at the double team or trying to go around the left back, he cuts inside and kind of holds the man off, doesn't even pass the ball off and put another team under more pressure. He allows Osasuna to get physical with him, knowing that the game has been tight, a lot of fouls have been called, and he picks up the foul himself. Then a few passes later, and he puts the ball in the back of the net. And it's that kind of difference That is why, again, Barcelona can win the Liga. They do have the quality to score goals like that, and that wound up being game winner. 2 is worst version. Let's be a little negative here because Barcelona did put themselves in a hole. And one of the main reasons for that, or I should say one of the main people that helped lead to that, was the worst version of Sergio Busquets that we have seen this season. There are many who are asking why he's starting. That's totally fair. But going into this game, after what we saw against Almeria, Xavi obviously was happy with what he had seen. So the only change was Christensen coming in for Pique, which, I mean, in theory, you expect Christensen to do pretty much the exact same thing Pique did because that should be Christensen level. So I think that lineup is exactly the same because if it's not broke, don't fix it. That's kind of been Xavi's philosophy when picking his lineup. So that's why he kept the same 11 that he did. Well, basically 10 of the 11 that he did against Almeria. And again, I'm not surprised. I don't know why people were surprised why he would drop Busquets right before the international break when some players are going to get time off. Sure, many of them will be going to World Cup, but at least all the players that featured today will be getting 2 weeks or so until they have to actually play another game that matters. So it is going to be a lot of training, a lot of working through some things. Maybe a little bit of rest, but largely they're going to be traveling, and I know that is worrisome for these players, but even some of those players might crash out in the group stage. Who knows? Some of them may really only have 3 matches in the next month and a half. You'd expect some of those countries to go farther, but again, who knows? Back to focusing on Busquets, this started early. In the 6th minute, Ter Stegen's in a bit of trouble, but Busquets, his first touch absolutely lets him down. He winds up rolling the ball across himself and putting it right in the path of Osasuna. And Barcelona were very fortunate that Marcos Alonso was there to block that out. Goes to the corner, Osasuna keep up the pressure, and it leads to a goal anyway. Busquets also at fault for the goal. He lost him unless someone else has any other explanation. I can't see it. It looks like it was just Busquets losing a 1v1 battle in such a fashion. Any protests? I don't know. I felt like in the moment I said they were undeserved. It was definitely a goal, yes, and I think it takes a lot of contact to nullify a goal. But I also hear the argument that Marcos Alonso being, tackled. A tackle is a word that we use in the sport, so that's not even fair. He was completely manhandled, just decimated. There's nothing that Marcos, as much as people don't like Marcos Alonso, there's nothing he could do. He was just eviscerated like a rhino, like a juggernaut, whatever you have, like that Marvel Comics character. And so Marcos Alonso definitely fouled, but again, I don't know what kind of contact is necessary to nullify a goal in that situation because yes, Marcos Alonso probably could have headed that away, and that ball basically goes through the space that he was. So that would be the reasoning as to why VAR should probably overturn that, because if that kind of contact happens away from the shot, I think, again, because David Garcia just won the 1v battle against Busquets, the VAR ignores it completely anyway. And I think that's kind of where they landed, or, hey, maybe they got it wrong. Either way, Busquets is culpable for the goal. We're not going to rewrite history on that. But before people go crazy about the back line and Barcelona, the big picture about Barcelona's defense falling apart, they have kept clean sheets in 11 of the 14 matches this season. So I think we got to cry over different things. That back line for Barcelona has been really good this season, and this is a mistake by an individual player. He continued it in the 16th minute, dispossessed, almost another goal. In the 20th minute, misplays a pass where Barcelona should have been off to the races. For the first 20 minutes of that game, Busquets, it was about as calamitous as we have seen from him in quite some time. And one of those performances, I think, honestly, that Xavi has to look at very much like Pique against Inter. That Xavi has to look at that performance and ask some major questions. Frankie de Jong played really well in that game, and Busquets played terribly. And as Levon and I spoke about yesterday on the podcast, does Barcelona lose when Frankie de Jong plays well? Well, the answer here in the inverse is that Barcelona were still able to win despite Busquets playing poorly, which I think goes a long way into telling you that Barcelona might be okay if they start to phase him out quite a bit in the second half of the season. 3 is surprisingly reckless. 2 yellow cards from Lewandowski in 31 minutes. Is it uncharacteristic? Of course it is. He's only been sent off once in his entire career prior to this. That was back in 2013 when he was playing for Dortmund against Hamburg. And again, he was a young player at the time. That was almost 10 years ago. So Lewandowski, you'd expect that, he would have had a cooler head, but both of those yellows were yellows. He didn't get a full solid red. It wasn't like one rush of blood to the head where he was injuring a player. 2 yellow cards that were deserved. The first one was a yellow, and the second one wasn't watching the ball at all. Just went and tackled the man, jumped into him, and that's going to be a yellow every time. And for the idea that a second yellow needs even more contact, well, I think he gave that to you. I think it was deserving of even a second yellow, which, as we always say, whether it's fair or not, referees do give a longer leash. The problem with the yellow isn't necessarily about that Lewandowski was sent off, because I think people bring up, obviously, the role of the referee in Gil Manzano, who in the past has sent off Messi and Neymar and Luis Suarez, and does have a habit of taking it to the big stars and giving them red cards. But the problem with Manzano wasn't just the double yellow, it was that he lost control of the match very early. By handing out that 10th minute yellow to Lewandowski, it set a precedent. And he just was handing those yellow cards out like water for Barcelona. On the other side for Osasuna, they were getting yellows late, but they probably deserved some earlier yellow cards in the game, where their tactical fouling, which was praised when Bayern Munich did it against Barcelona, but it was a bit excessive for Osasuna, especially when they're playing at home, especially when they're up a man. And they should be taking more advantage of space than they should be trying to hack Barcelona down to disrupt a game that was already disorganized because, again, there's one less man playing for the opposition. It's a weird one from Lewandowski, something you really don't expect and shouldn't expect for maybe another 10 years if he's still playing at that point. But unfortunately, he will be missing the Espanyol fixture when Barcelona return from the little break here. So Lewandowski, yeah, this will be remembered in about a month and a half time, but I'm going to probably forget about it by then. 4 is fighting back. When Ferran Torres was called offside for a goal, the delivery from Jordi Alba was a pretty good delivery. Some may have had this reaction that, oh, Barcelona are going to do this. They're going to come close, but they're going to fall short. But I think what that goal that was called offside indicated was that Barca figured out and found a way through Osasuna. Basically the last 5 to 8 minutes of that first half, even down 10 men. And in that second half, they expounded upon that and showed you with that Pedri goal that they had figured out Osasuna, even with their 11 men to their 10. It doesn't happen often, and it's hard to make this kind of history, but this was a historic comeback in that Barcelona away from home, after being down at halftime and down a man, they'd only ever achieved 2 draws with those circumstances. A draw at the Vicente Calderón against Atletico Madrid back in 1970, and a 3-3 against Rayo Vallecano in 1992. So for them to come back and win, for the first time ever, being down a goal and down a man at halftime, that just shows you the fight and resolve that this team has. And as much as I've been on Busquets and said that he didn't have a good first half or first 20, 25, 30 minutes, he did rebound in the second half to, even when legs were tired, be in the right spots, shut down space, and shuttle the ball around the way he was supposed to. But there are other players around him as Busquets kind of brought that level down from, we'll say, drowning to kind of just floating there on the surface. Some of his other teammates raised their level. And I do especially have to focus on, we'll say, the left-footed defenders in this game. Well, I mean, Christensen was good too, but this might have been Marcos Alonso's best game in an FC Barcelona uniform. He was just tidy on the day, made all the right decisions, and defended for his life. Jordi Alba, really good as well. Positionally, very smart, and especially in the second half, when Barcelona, even if it was 1-1, and a draw I felt was necessary, he controlled that left side so well. He was a calming influence to Ansu when he came on, to Gabi on the left wing when he had to push out, and even when Barcelona were playing in that 4-4-1, when they were down 10 men in the first half, he was supporting Pedri in really good ways when Pedri was forced out wide, and positionally, yeah, Alba was really there. And again, his final ball set up the offside goal, that's one, but he also set up the second goal with Pedri. And good on Barcelona for that immediate response. Ferran Torres, who also had a good day. It was a quick warning shot from him, and then a nice delivery from Alba for Torres. The deflection back to Pedri arriving in the box. And I thought it was a rather simple finish, having watched it live, but for him to choose to go near post and get it through the goalkeeper and the 2 defenders, it was a good piece of finishing by Pedri. And as much as I can praise Alonso and Alba, I think the success of those left backs and those left-footed defenders was highlighted by Balde in the 61st minute. He got an earlier yellow, just showing how excessive, as I said, that Manzano was with his yellows, but immediately responds and has a tremendous run coming from outside, inside, going forward. And it seemed like Barcelona dribbled themselves out of pressure each time they needed to. And it was a different player, whether it was Alba, whether it was De Jong, whether it was Balde, whether it was Pedri. They seemed to have an answer for Osasuna and took it to them with their superior technical ability. Xavi did worry me a little bit, though, in that fight back. I think he was trusting in his 10 a bit too much. I was wondering where the subs were coming right around the 65th minute, and then the 70th minute, just wondering when are reinforcements coming in for these tired legs. I felt like a go-ahead goal was coming for Osasuna because they were putting pressure on Barcelona, but Xavi stayed the course, kept the ship tight, and then came the subs, Gabi in the 74th minute, and then Ansu and Raphinha in the 78th. But as I said earlier, prior to that, he did move De Jong to center back, so he was making adjustments even if he didn't change personnel. And even Chadi Riyad coming off the bench late, and there was that important play where he Could have even had a dangerous play where he put his head in, and the guy almost kicked him, that being Budimir in the head. So Riyad making his first team debut in a really important moment as Barcelona are nearing stoppage time in a game. They're up 2-1. A lot of trust Xavi putting in a youngster, and I'm hoping that does indicate to us that he might trust him as the fifth center back instead of going out in the market in January and reinforcing a position that, again, with 4 solid center backs, I don't necessarily think you need an extra one. And headline 5 is Swan song for Pique. I did have to mention this because I do think it was fitting that his final game was at the Spotify Camp Nou, or the Camp Nou, in front of that crowd, giving the speech, tears rolling down his face, and saying goodbye in that manner. I think that was the right way for him to go out. But instead, Pique, I mean, what can you say about Pique, right? Going out at halftime, giving Manzano an earful, getting sent off in the tunnel, that ends his FC Barcelona career, that ends his professional footballing career. That sums up Pique in a nutshell. Gave everything to the badge, saw him at home, again, tears, all the emotion, all those things, then goes out on the road to another place in the Liga where I have to remind you, other than Catalonia, where the Spanish national team never really play games, Pique used to be booed around Spain when he played for Spain almost everywhere. And you get the sentiment that he's always going to be that agitator, no matter what. When he comes back to Barcelona and he's sitting in, whether it's a president's box or one of those suites or whatever, he's always going to get some eyeballs on him and the attention because he always pokes the bear and says the right thing and says the wrong thing at the wrong and the right times. It's just the way Pique is. So I just wanted to highlight the fact that he gets sent off at halftime, so it doesn't end his Barcelona career on the field. He ends it by getting sent off, and this somehow just a fitting an end to his career, as was the home match where he, again, had the crowd in the palm of his hand and everybody's cheering, and it's this emotional and fantastic moment to end it all. So there you go. Hats off to you, Pique, and hats off to FC Barcelona. Again, this comeback marks the end of this first half of the season, if you will, because now they're off until December 31st, so the New Year's Eve against Espanyol, where they face a dreaded rival without Lewandowski, but they will do it on the top of the table. Is it 2 points? Is it 3 points? Is it 5 points? We'll have to see on Thursday with Real Madrid results. Either way, I'm going to have a lot of content, including a podcast, a big podcast with a special guest coming out later this week, and then plenty of content throughout the break. Make sure you don't miss it by subscribing to the channel and share it, all those different things. You know it's a big help, and I do appreciate everybody being with me for the first part of this season as I did all these podcasts and match reviews and all this different content. So I'm going to keep trying to keep it up as long as I can. As I said, positive comments and support and all those different things. Following us on social media in all these different ways is really helpful as well. And again, sharing it to anybody who may want to, not just on YouTube, but other places as well. Always a big help. So again, thank you so much as always. Until next time, Forza Barca.